and welcome to another episode of Behind the Green Screen. As you can see, there's no green screen behind me, and this makes episode 23. Woohoo! Okay, so for this episode, I'm getting back on track with covering, the fiction books in my library. And this group of books that I'm going to talk about, they came out of something that happened to me when I was stationed down in Pensacola, Florida, what they call the Redneck Riviera. That's what they called it. Or the Florida Panhandle is another way. But yeah, I was stationed down in Florida, and it was for cryptologic technician school. And it was supposed to be for, I don't know, 6 to 8 weeks, but it turned out longer than that. And I don't want to get into how that came about, because then I'm going to start ranting and raving and I'm going to really be pissed off. So I want to throw out good vibes. So I'm not going to relive that aspect of that. But I will tell a story that sort of leads to the books that I'm going to cover for this episode. All right. So given the fact that, I love the Golden Girls, and, I'm a big fan of Sophia Petrillo. So I'm going to start this episode like she would start one of her stories. Okay. So picture it. It's May of 1991. And as I said, I'm stationed down in Pensacola, Florida, the air station there, for training. Now, the one thing I can say about being in the military, and I think this still holds true, is that like your safety was of great concern, because the military wasn't always welcome in the areas where the bases were. I noticed more like down south, but basically everywhere, at least while I was in the military, and this was in the late 80s, early 90s. In some places, it wasn't safe to be a military member or wear a uniform, because you would be targeted. There was a lot of resentment about the uniform, a lot of resentment about the military, its place, wartime situations and all of that. And there was a lot of resentment. As a matter of fact, when I was first transferred, my first duty station was a little base that was off of NOB, was called Sinclair Fleet Compound. And that was my first duty station. I worked the pass and decal office. And I would be warned by, my shipmates, other people that I worked with, that, that in certain instances it wasn't safe. And that at one time their businesses would post signs in front of their buildings that would say, "No dogs, no sailors." Okay. And that's like, okay, that's the type of, you know, resentment that sailors faced and Marines faced while down there. Um, so I'm in Pensacola, and I'm between romances. And back then, I had no problems, venturing out on my own. I was sort of out of place there because, well, to make a long story short, um, I was different in that when I got into the military, you're supposed to go to your training school for whatever your job or rate is going to be. But that didn't happen for me. I was sent out into the fleet, what they call sent out to the fleet, which is where my first duty station was in Norfolk at Sinclair Fleet Compound. And then after that, you wait for your A school, your training school, and then you go to training. So that was the case with me. So I had fleet experience, whereas all the rest just came basically straight out of boot camp. So I felt a little bit out of place, because there was a very few of us, that like a good majority of the people who were there for training came straight out of boot camp. So when you come in from the fleet, there are certain privileges that you get as someone who's been out in the fleet going to school, but I did not get those privileges. And um and it wasn't because I was misbehaving, it was because of my weight. That's why I don't want to get into it. But I had a baby by cesarean section who was 10 pounds 8 ounces, and I gained weight. And the military, the Navy, wasn't very understanding about it. And so their method of attack with this extra weight that made me apparently unfit for duty was that they would hold me down there longer, until I lost the weight. And the privileges that I would get which would be, better living quarters. They gave them to me and then they took them away. And that was basically my existence. Um, I think I transferred down there in April or March or April, and I didn't graduate until July of 1991. So there's that story that I was trying to dodge telling, but yeah. So that's what happened to me down there. And so in between romances, I would venture out. Now, when I say that, safety was important, they had shuttles. So if you wanted to go off base and you wanted to go into town, no hitch, don't take public transport. They had shuttles that would take you to where certain places where you needed or you wanted to go or needed to go. And so I would take the shuttle to the mall. And as you well know, excuse me, as you well know, um, I would go to the bookstore. If you watch, I don't remember the episode number and I apologize for that, but the name of the episode is called Let's Talk About Sex and Baby, in which I talk about erotica and how I encountered that down in Pensacola when I was stationed there at the bookstore. And so this is what happened here. Now, let me back up a bit. Okay. So at that time, and I don't know when they started closing down, and I only noticed this in the South. I never really saw this up north. But down south, they used to have 99-cent movie theaters. And so when the features, ran out in the big theaters, then the movies would come to the 99-cent theaters. So if you missed it in the big theaters, you still had a shot to see it at the 99-cent ones. And yeah, the popcorn was awful, but what do you expect? It was 99 cents. So um, I think I discovered that there was a 99-cent movie theater, and I love movies. Absolutely adore. I live for movies practically. And so I went to the 99-cent movie theater, and I saw this movie that came out that year in February 1991 on Valentine's Day. And it was a movie that you would never think would be a movie that would be released on such a romantic day. But there is. And this movie was The Silence of the Lambs. Um, I was reluctant to do this episode because, this whole series is about a serial killer named Hannibal Lecter. And for the life of me, I do not understand the fascination with serial killers. I think it's absolutely macabre to be wrapped up in people who are just do horrific things to other people. And as a matter of fact, I was teaching a first year experience course, and I think I talked about this. I taught a first year experience course on the banality of evil. That was the theme that I had created. And the goal was to talk to students about how easy it is to flip from good to bad. But they came in with this fascination of serial killers, and I was like, let me go through my philosophies and make them read a couple of things, and maybe they might not find serial killers as fascinating as they did when they first started my class. That when they all revealed, because at the time there was a Netflix series called Mindhunter starring Jonathan Groff, who played George III in Hamilton. He plays this FBI agent that goes into prisons and interviews all of these infamous serial killers like John Wayne Gacy and what's the other name? Oh my gosh. John Wayne Gacy and the one who used to hunt co-eds. It'll come to me in a minute. I hate it when I get these senior moments. But in any event, so they were all fascinated. And they were talking about Mindhunter, and it's like, did you see this show? And blah, blah, blah. It's really great. And I'm like, no, no, no. Now, as a rule, I am not fascinated by serial killers. Understand that this is fiction. All right. The author, Thomas Harris, took many different serial killers and sort of combined them into this composite character of Hannibal Lecter. Because you did have Jeffrey Dahmer. That wasn't the one I was thinking of, but Jeffrey Dahmer was the one who ate his victims, right? Cannibal. And then you had the serial killer who was really charming, who was picking up co-eds and murdering them all across. Why can't I think of his name? Oh, well, whatever. But yeah, so it's a composite of characters. But what drew me to the series was the movie. And it was well done. I mean, Jodie Foster, Anthony Hopkins, they had such great chemistry in their roles. And it really it raised the hairs on the back of my neck. But I just thought that this was an incredible movie, the way it was directed, the way it was edited. I was just like, wow, this is an amazing movie. Because I liked the movie so much, I found out, or I think I was looking at the credits and found out that this was based on a book. So this is not the book that I bought. I somehow lost that book. I had to buy this book to replace it and use it as a prop for this episode. If I'm going to be completely honest. But I went out and bought the book and I read it. And I have to tell you that the screenplay is spot on with the book. It's as if the screenwriter basically opened the book and just plucked out the dialogue and put it in the screenplay with some direction. Seriously, it was very, 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 very good. I like Thomas Harris's writing, and I wouldn't have stuck with the series had it not been for this book right here. So before I get started on all of these, because I don't know if Thomas Harris wrote anything beyond this series. He probably did, but let me get into that. I'll get into that later. Okay, so the 4 books that I'm going to cover for tonight, they're all written by Thomas Harris. 3 of them are a series. 1 is not. And it's his first book, and it was turned into a movie, and it's Black Sunday. It was turned into a movie. I cannot remember the year, but it was directed by John Frankenheimer. Easter egg, Easter egg, Easter egg. I'm giving you an Easter egg. That's all I'm going to say about John Frankenheimer. But he directed Black Sunday. I remember watching the movie. It was one of those things, when you're flipping through channels and you sort of land on something and there's a certain scene and all of a sudden you're like, hey, I'm going to watch this. That's how I landed on Black Sunday. And then that's when I found out that Black Sunday was based on this book. Now, I don't remember too much about this book, so I'm going to read the jacket cover. Michael Lander is the most dangerous man in America. He pilots a television blimp over packed football stadiums every weekend. He is fascinated with explosives, and he happens to be very, very crazy. That's why a beautiful PLO operative has seduced him. That's why on Super Bowl Sunday, the world will witness the bloody assassination of the US president, and the worst mass murder in history, unless someone discovers what Michael Lander plans and can kill him first. I know, right? That's pretty deep. Now, I do remember that Lander was indeed crazy. And it's one of those things where you're like, oh my God, this could be anyone. Anyone. Now, again, it's one of those books, it's suspense, it's suspenseful, without a doubt. And again, Harris knows how to tell a story. So I do, pick it up or, watch the movie. You're in for something very entertaining. Okay. Now I'm going to get into the trilogy. I'll start with I'll start with these two. All right. So we all know The Silence of the Lambs. However, there was a prequel to The Silence of the Lambs, and that was Red Dragon. Now, Silence of the Lambs, the movie adaptation, that came out before they did the adaptation for Red Dragon. Red Dragon is Hannibal Lecter's first FBI obsession, and he's obsessed with an agent who was called Will Graham. And he is kind of mentioned. I don't believe the name was mentioned in the movie. I think maybe it was kind of hinted, but it's definitely mentioned in the book, Will Graham. Now, the movie starred Ed Norton as Will Graham. Mary Louise Parker starred as his wife, and and Anthony Hopkins plays Hannibal Lecter in this as well. And also Harvey Keitel plays Will Graham's boss. Oh, and also Philip Seymour Hoffman is in it. And no one, and I'm going to say this and with most due respect, no one plays a douchebag better than Philip Seymour Hoffman. And he does play the douchebag of all douchebags in this movie. And he does get his comeuppance, which is really satisfying. Trust. Very, very satisfying. Oh, and Ray Fiennes is in it. Ralph Fiennes. He plays the serial killer. So it's a very good movie, just as good as Silence of the Lambs. So, all right. So there's these two books. Now, there was a third one that came out. And it says, critics says that it was as good as Red Dragon and Silence of the Lambs, but I have to disagree. And I think a lot of people were disappointed, like the readers like you and me were indeed disappointed by this book. And I'll tell you why. My nose is itching again. I hate this. All right. So in Silence of the Lambs, Clarice Starling, which is Hannibal Lecter's second FBI obsession, she plays this. Now, to be fair, she's very new. She's stumbling around in the dark. And I do sense that there's some sort of flirtation that's going on between the two of them. And Hannibal Lecter gets a little bit obsessed with Clarice Starling after his little brief analysis of her when she's trying to get more information out of him about Buffalo Bill, the serial killer that they're trying to find and take down. And and here's the thing about their relationship, is kind of one-sided. Like, she thinks she knows Hannibal Lecter, but he definitely knows her. He knows her trigger points. He knows that, that he is intriguing to her, that because he is an absolute gentleman. Okay. He's very intelligent. He's witty. He can hold a conversation and he's respectable, right? He is all about manners. And that's the weird thing about this. Like, he is the most polite cannibal you have ever met, if you ever were to meet a cannibal. And so there's this flirtation that goes on between the two of them. But for Clarice, I felt as though when Hannibal Lecter escaped, she felt as like abandoned or lost in a way, because here she's caught up in this tense cat and mouse game, trying to find the serial killer, trying to rescue the damsel in distress, while also trying to take him down as well and pick his brain, because, he's a fascinating study for her. But, it's she's attracted yet repulsed at the same time. And that's the what I got out of her as a character. All right. And I think it's more than just trying to rescue the damsel in distress. But she was a strong character. I felt her to be strong, still finding her way as an FBI agent, but I felt her to be bold because she was willing to. Now, to be fair, and everybody saw the movie, so I'm not really doing any kind of real significant spoiler alert. But you know that she basically was dumb luck that she stumbled onto Buffalo Bill and managed to kill him and take him down. Just dumb luck. I mean, she was on the right trail, but she just happened to be at the right place at the right time. So, but once Hannibal Lecter escapes, it just seems as though like she just lost her purpose, right? And that's what I get when I read Hannibal, which was the third book in the series, and it ended with this book. Now, the reason why this book was so disappointing to me and other people who read and saw the movie was that for whatever reason, Thomas Harris turns Clarice into a cannibal. She's drugged, but she is turned into a cannibal. Okay, so let me give like a brief synopsis. So Clarice Starling, she gets into a little bit of trouble. I can't remember exactly, but she gets into a little bit of trouble. And even though she's the it girl for taking down Buffalo Bill, a lot of people resent her success. And so they kind of make things difficult. And she's sort of like, everybody's sort of like tired of her and they want to see her gone because of what she represents. So in the movie and in the book, Hannibal has escaped and he is in Italy now, and he is, pretending to be a professor, not pretending to be. I mean, he does have the credentials and the knowledge to be a professor. And so, but, Hannibal, he has a lot of enemies. And one of them is a former patient of his. As a matter of fact, I think all of his former enemies were former patients. But a former patient of his um, wants revenge because of what Hannibal did to him. And it basically, whatever happened, it disfigured him. And this guy he wants him found and he wants him killed. So in the meantime, he is training boars, not pigs, boars, to like human flesh. I think you know where I'm going with this. So, through a series of events, whatever, Clarice tracks Hannibal down to Italy. And things happen, bing, bong, boom, and both of them are now kidnapped and held prisoner by the guy who is hunting Hannibal and wants his revenge. Now, the one thing that sort of became a disappointment to me is that in this book, it appears as though they have a romance going on. Not a bromance, a romance. And she is sort of maybe, I don't know if she's sort of starts to confront her feelings or whatever she is, whatever it is that she thinks she feels or fast. I don't know. But the end result is that Hannibal Lecter is this close to being killed by his enemy. He's this close, right? She rescues him. She rescues him. And by her rescuing him, she puts her life in danger and he winds up rescuing her. All of this takes place, I think, in Sardinia, where the guy who was hunting down Hannibal was training his boars, who wound up eating him, by the way. Spoiler alert. And so Hannibal, I don't know how he did it, but he winds up both of them escaping, bringing her back to the United States, and she's drugged. I don't know how he did it. I cannot remember if it was talked about in the book, but she gets shot in the shoulder, and he drugs her. He fixes her wound, digs out the bullet, and then shit gets really, really weird. Like he has her on this psychotropic medicine that sort of lowers her inhibitions. It's not truth serum per se. It's whatever it is that he gave her. It was sort of psychedelic because she's coming in and out of it, but he winds up tricking her into eating a human brain. And I think that was when I was just like, dude, how can you have her, be this hero in this book, right? Where she's so brave and, while at the same time naive, and then you flip her around and turn her into a boyfriend of a serial killer who is now eating human remain or human body parts. It was just like that was the thing that killed it for me. I was just like, no, why did you do that? You shouldn't have done that. And so I was just very disappointed in the book and in the movie. But as a series goes, it's great. I highly recommend it if you're into suspense and if you're into serial killers. And again, this Hannibal Lecter is a combination, a composite of many different serial killers like Jeffrey Dahmer, like John Wayne Gacy, I was trying to, what is his name? He was hunting down college co-eds. Sugar snaps. I'll put it right there. That's where I'll put the name, because it's escaping me right now. And of course, there are other serial killers, but so that's what Hannibal Lecter is. And so I do recommend it. Because Harris really did his research, absolutely did his research. It was as if he sat an FBI guy down and basically picked his brain about everything, about procedure, about all of it. And so to recap, all the books from Thomas Harris is the feature author for tonight's episode, and the books are Black Sunday, Red Dragon, which came out after, as a movie, came out after Silence of the Lambs. The silence of the lambs. Everybody drops the, and I have to be aware, the silence of the lambs. And then finally, Hannibal. Now, I don't know if um, Thomas Harris wrote any books after this, because I basically stopped reading him after this one. But do your own investigation, see if there are any other books after Hannibal. I'm not saying don't read this. I'm not saying don't watch the movie. But you will be disappointed if you read this and then read this to see what he did with the character. And if you are one of those people like that believe a character should, okay. So every character has a character arc, right? They have this change. And I think the reason why I did not like it is because I did not like the character arc. I did not like the change. I felt that it was just didn't make any sense as Clarice Starling as a character. It didn't make any sense to me. So that's why. But if you're not that, you don't really care about that, and this thing is shifting again. So if you're the type of person that really doesn't care about character arc and whatever, and you just want to be told a story, then I recommend all three of them, as well as the movies. Because the movie version of Hannibal Lecter, Jodie Foster did not reprise her role in this. Juliana Moore played Clarice Starling, excuse me. Anthony Hopkins did come back as Hannibal Lecter, but there was an agent who was Clarice Starling's boss, who was mentioned in the first movie, but played by a different actor. But in this movie, he plays a bigger role, this FBI character, and it's played by Ray Liotta. And so, yeah. So it's, again, I like Juliana Moore. I didn't have any problem about, acting, blah, blah, blah. None of that. It was just the arc of the character. I didn't like where he took it. It was just weird. Okay. So, yeah, so that's it for this episode. And I still haven't, that name still have, Ted Bundy. Ted Bundy. That's the serial killer. Ted Bundy. Okay, so yeah, so that's it for this episode of Behind the Green Screen. I have another set of books that I will cover for the next episode, so stay tuned for that. And so, with that being said, now it's time to do our mantra. All is well. Everything is working for my highest good. Out of this experience, only good will come. I am safe. Namaste. Until next time, bye.